People living in developed nations have become disconnected from the everyday processes of civilization that support them. Individually, we are astoundingly ignorant of even the basics of the production of food, shelter, clothes, medicine, materials, or vital substances. Our survival skills have atrophied to the point that much of humanity would be incapable of sustaining itself if the life support system of modern civilization failed, if food no longer magically appeared on store shelves, or clothes on hangers. Of course, there was a time when everyone was a survivalist, with a far more intimate connection to the land and methods of production, and to survive in a post-apocalyptic world you'd need to turn back the clock and relearn these core skills. What's more, each piece of modern technology we take for granted requires an enormous support network of other technologies. There's much more to making an iPhone than knowing the design and materials of each of its components. The device sits as the capstone on the very tip of a vast pyramid of enabling technologies. The mining and refining of the rare element indium for the touchscreen, high-precision photolithographic manufacturing of microscopic circuitry and the computing processor chips, and the incredibly miniaturized components in the microphone, not to mention the network of cell phone towers and other infrastructure necessary to maintain telecommunications and the functioning of the phone. The first generation born after the fall would find the internal mechanisms of a modern phone absolutely inscrutable, the pathways of its microchip circuits invisibly small to the human eye, and their purpose utterly mysterious. The sci-fi author Arthur C. Clarke said in 1961 that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. In the aftermath of the fall, the rub is that this miraculous technology would have belonged not to some starfaring alien species, but to people just a generation in our own past. Even quotidian artifacts of our civilization that aren't particularly high-tech still require a diversity of raw materials that must be mined or otherwise gathered, processed in specialized plants, and assembled in a manufacturing facility. And all of this, in turn, relies on electrical power stations and transport over great distances. This point is made very eloquently in Leonard E. Read's 1958 essay, written from the perspective of one of our most basic tools, pencil. The astounding conclusion is that because the sourcing of raw materials and the methods of production are so dispersed, there is not a single person on the face of the earth who knows how to make even this simplest of implements. A potent demonstration of the gulf that now separates our individual capabilities and the production of even simple gizmos in our everyday life was offered by Thomas Thwaites when, in 2008, he attempted to make a toaster from scratch while studying for his M.A. at the Royal College of Art. He reverse-engineered a cheap toaster down to its barest essentials: iron frame, mica mineral insulating sheets, nickel heating filaments, copper wires and plug, and plastic casing, and then sourced all the raw materials himself, digging them out of the ground in quarries and mines. He also looked up simpler historical metallurgical techniques, referring to a 16th century text to build a rudimentary iron smelting furnace using a metal trash can, barbecue coals, and a leaf blower for bellows. The finished model is satisfyingly primitive, but also grotesquely beautiful in its own right, and neatly underscores the core of our problem. Of course, even in one of the extreme doomsday scenarios, groups of survivors would not need to become self-sufficient immediately. If the great majority of the population succumbed to an aggressive virus, there would still be vast resources left behind. The supermarkets would remain stocked with plentiful food, and you could pick up a fine new set of designer clothes from the deserted department stores, or liberate from the showroom the sports car you've always dreamed about. Find an abandoned mansion, and with a little foraging it wouldn't be too hard to salvage some mobile diesel generators to keep the lighting, heating, and appliances running. Underground lakes of fuel remain beneath gas stations, sufficient to keep your new home and car functioning for a significant period. In fact, small groups of survivors could probably live pretty comfortably in the immediate aftermath of the fall. For a while, civilization could coast on its own momentum. The survivors would find themselves surrounded by a wealth of resources there for the taking, a bountiful Garden of Eden. But the garden is rotting. Food, clothes, medicines, machines.